Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of July 20th, 2022, and welcome everyone back in the City Council chambers. The City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting hybrid. This will allow us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person in the chambers. It is our hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate via Zoom in a future council meeting, you may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you select the Register Here to Provide Comment via Zoom link, you'll need to fill out the form completely, and once the form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person to the chambers. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin,
Excused?
Councilmember Ryan,
Excused?
Councilmember Vogely,
Excused?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Here.
Councilmember Tui,
Excused?
Councilmember Fossey,
Here.
Councilmember Schwab,
Here.
President Stone Cipher.
Here. Councilmember Schwab, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'd love to. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Zarlingo, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
This council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohopes people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and the water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Next, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of July 13th, 2022?
Councilmember Schwab, so moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes. Before I move to public comment, I'll note Mayor Franklin is not here this evening, so I'd like to call up Chief Templeman tonight to introduce some new officers for swearing in. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President Stone Cipher, and good evening, council members. It is an honor for me to be here before you, I think for the first time in probably almost 3 years in person, to swear in some of our newest police officers. And before I provide the introduction, I just want to make a comment that this is significant for us to be able to swear in 3 officers at one time. The competition and the recruiting in law enforcement is unlike anything I've ever seen in my 30 years of being a police officer. And we're all in competition. Every law enforcement agency in the state is in competition for officers like this, for this small pool of police officers that are qualified and that meet the standards to be a law enforcement officer in the state of Washington and for the city of Everett. And so I am really pleased and look forward to coming back before you with many more of these in the future. So we're going to start with Marwan Abuzi. And Marwan was born in Alexandria, Egypt, and his family moved to the United States in 1999. He grew up in New Jersey, where he attended high school and college. Marwan comes to us as a lateral police officer after having served 3 years with the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. Marwan worked primarily patrol assignments and is fluent in the Arabic language. Marwan finds that the most enjoyable aspects of his job as a police officer are engaging with the community in a positive way, strengthening the trust between the community and the police, and creating an everlasting bond with his colleagues. Marwan chose to relocate to the Pacific Northwest because of the vast, beautiful landscape in the surrounding area. He chose the Everett Police Department specifically because the size of the department was exactly what he was looking for. The Everett Police Department is large enough to have all the necessary training and equipment, and even some larger agencies don't offer, yet small enough to know everyone that you work with and operate more as a family. What stood out about the Everett Police Department to Marwan is that our agency is supported by the community, which he believes directly reflects on the professionalism and great work ethic of the officers and leadership of the Everett Police Department. Marwan very recently moved to Everett from the DC area and is getting to know his way around the city and what it has to offer. During his spare time, he loves to travel and spend time outdoors. Marwan looks forward to serving the residents of Everett and hopes to eventually be assigned to the anti-crime team or gang response unit. Thanks, Marwan.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Sam de Los Santos. So Sam was born and raised in Royal City in central Washington. Sam started working at a young age alongside his mother, a Mexican immigrant, to be able to provide for his two siblings. After graduating from high school, Sam moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to attend North Idaho College, where he studied biology and wrestled. Sam made the move to Seattle at the age of 20, where he continued his studies at North Seattle College and trained in mixed martial arts. Sam and his wife, Vanessa, have been married for 6 years. They have 2 daughters, ages 3 and 1. And after the birth of his first daughter, Sam felt the need to strive for something greater than himself. He decided that law enforcement was a way to help those in need while upholding everybody's constitutional rights. Okay, Dan. From the moment Sam first interacted with our recruitment officer, Danny Rebellos, he knew that Everett was a place for him. Officer Rebellos treated him like a human instead of just another applicant or recruit in the process. After that interaction, Sam knew that the Everett Police Department had some great people throughout the entire organization. So Sam recently graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy on July 14th, and as he goes into field training, he's extremely eager to learn from his training officers and is very excited to get to know the community that he's going to be a part of very soon. In Sam's spare time, he enjoys jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, and spending time with his family. Sam is a fluent Spanish speaker and is very much looking forward to his career at the Everett Police Department. Thanks, Sam. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Forrest Hopkins. So Forrest was born and raised in Snohomish County and on Camino Island. He graduated from Stanwood High School in 2014 and pursued an education in computer information systems from Skagit Valley College. During his college years, Forrest jumped into the family business as a painting contractor and ended up taking ownership of the company in 2019. He still owns the business and helps as he can with some of the day-to-day affairs of the business. Growing up on Camino Island, Everett was always the big city for Forrest. Now it's home to his family, his peers, and his favorite community. Forrest selected the Everett Police Department for those very reasons. After meeting fellow co-workers, Forrest can truly say that he is proud to be here working with all of our amazing officers and civilian staff. Throughout Forrest's life, he always felt the need to assist others. After many discussions with his now wife, Maddie, Forrest decided that getting into law enforcement would be the most fulfilling career he could pursue. Providing others with the safety and protection is a position he wants to hold. Forrest graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy also on July 14th. He's looking forward to getting out on patrol and assisting his fellow officers in any way he can. Although Forrest knows the process is going to be long and oftentimes difficult, knowing that he is bettering the community one call at a time gives him the utmost joy and satisfaction. Forrest and his wife Maddie have been married just over a week. Both enjoy the Pacific Northwest and all the activities it has to offer. He's excited about his future here at the Everett Police Department. And I do want to mention that I do get the opportunity to meet with the families before the swearing in, and Forrest has quite the support system, and they were all here today, and they're all here in the audience. I'm not going to name them all individually. I'd be up here too long. But that's critically important for our officers, right? This day and age is that you have to have that support from your family and loved ones, and I think all 3 of these officers have that. So I present to you the three officers, Hopkins, De Los Santos, and Abuzi, for swearing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept Marwan Abuzaid, Sam De Los Santos, and Forrest Hopkins as the newest members of the Everett Police Department?
So moved.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes, with enthusiasm.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes, welcome.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Yes, and now the clerk will administer the oath, and when they're finished, we will get a chance to say some comments.
Thank you.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name,
I, Marwan Jose,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I am either a citizen of the United States or a lawful permanent resident,
that I am either that I am either
a citizen of the United States.
Citizen of the United States is a good start.
Yeah, we're gonna cut it down. Or a lawful permanent resident,
or a lawful permanent resident,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Washington,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Everett,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police
of the
officer
city of Everett
to the city of Everett,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you.
We'll have some comments, and then we'll get our police officers to come and shake our hands. We'll start with Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, welcome. I spent last summer and fall knocking on about 1,000 doors or so of people in the district that I represent, asking what their questions and concerns were, what was happening in their neighborhoods. And I can tell you from that standpoint, you have great community support here. You have a great leadership team. I think that's really important. You have a cool recruiting officer. I met Dan Rabalos last fall. And I guess the major fly in the ointment is we need more so that we can do better for our community, more of you, and so that we can make your work environment as good as it can be. We're working on that. So I want to welcome you with substance as well. It's not just good feelings. We are serious about this. Couple of quick things for those of you, if you didn't grow up here. One thing I can tell you, I moved here from Colorado some 40 years ago. There are enough nice days here, sunny days and all that. Just aren't any extras as far as I can tell, so take advantage of them. One thing I found is a great way to see the Northwest and to get out in nature is sea kayaking. It gets you out on the water where it's not as crowded as some of the trails may be, so consider that. That was one of the best things I learned that way. But I think that's the main things I wanted to get across. Welcome, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Fosse.
A big welcome. I'm glad to see more folks joining up and cherishing Everett as much as we do. It is a very special place to be, and you guys chose right. I am also a fan of our new recruiting officer. He's pretty awesome, so share that with you. But I'm excited to have you join the team.
Thank you, Councilmember Schwab.
Welcome. You guys picked the right place. When you make those decisions on what city, obviously you have lots of choices. I hear the same thing from those in our community. And I know it can be difficult at times what people watch on TV or what they view in our culture, but I can tell you Everett is very, very police officer friendly. We love you guys. We love our police department. We love our chief. I don't think it matters what your background or your political affiliation is. You came to a community that loves the police department. So, and thank you, family, for being here. Make sure they stay, right? We want them to stay here and have a long, healthy career here. And I'll dedicate you as a representative of the community to also have your back. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I'm serving my 19th year on the city council, so I've seen a lot of officers come through here, and thank you for choosing Everett, and thank you for joining our force. In my 19 years on council, I can tell you that the city council and this community really supports our public safety officers and our police department and fire department as well. So we're really glad to welcome you here. We have a lot to offer in our community. And thank you for choosing a career of public service, because at the end of the day, we are all servants of the people that we serve. So I appreciate very much your commitment to that. So welcome. If you come on up, we'll all say, give you a handshake and send you on your way. We'll give a moment for families to clear out of the council chambers unless you would like to join us for the rest of our agenda. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the sun. And we'll move on to our public comment period. Deb Williams, thank you for being here this evening. Good to see you back. And do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Good evening, President Stonecipher. We do have online, we have a few individuals waiting to speak under public comment, and then we also have some individuals here in the audience. So I'm going to begin with those individuals online, and I'm going to begin with all she's listed is Josie. Josie, please begin by giving your name and residence for the, that would be your city of residence. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll ask you to begin to wrap up. Josie, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Josie, and I've been an ER nurse at Providence for 22 years. I live in Mukilteo, but I work in Everett, and we need more help with staffing. We would like some more resources and possible hazard pay or compensation to keep our core staff working. I'm going to highlight today the problems with practicing emergency room nursing in the hallways. And hallway nursing is a result of not being able to move patients out of the ER, whether because there's too many patients that are admitted and we don't have any more rooms, or because there's no more rooms in the community, whether we don't have any more mental health care rooms or nursing care rooms. Competent, experienced staff are leaving because it's impossible to give quality, safe care within the amount of time that we have in the emergency room. And how many have been assigned to us nurses? We're told to take care of patients in the hallway. So there are chairs and beds that line up and down our secured and working hallways, in which a chair is placed about every 20 feet. There are multiple chairs set up for patients right in front of the nurses station as well, and there are no barriers there other than a high countertop. These patients are 5 feet away from our phones and where I'm supposed to chart. And a lot of patients have acute and life-threatening injuries, infections, system failures, mental health care problems, confusions, new or old, cancers, drug use, simple or complex chest pain, abdominal pain, cuts, headaches, you name it, everybody that comes into the ER. Our hallways have become a crowded war zone because it is loud, chaotic, and sometimes traumatic. They are altered people are yelling, sometimes there's patients of all age groups that are in the hallways that are exposed to everybody's medical issues. We are talking to doctors behind us that are sitting, charting as well. I, as a nurse, have to uncover bodies to determine what patients' ailments are, and there are a lot of bodily fluids that I deal with on a daily basis in the hallway. There is lack of privacy doing EKGs and catheterizations and other tests, and although we do our best to find a screen or a blanket, we're discussing patient care with our doctors sitting right behind us, and we're teaching patients, and we're discussing medications and diseases, and everybody hears everything. We might be coordinating care with another nurse or charting. It's very difficult to complete charting because of the requirements and regulations, in addition to being just available to anybody that is there in the hallway. Anytime you walk by anybody, they need something.
30 seconds.
Thank you. There is a limited amount of items that we need. We are taking on so many more patients in our hallways. There's a lack of trays, supplies like sharps containers, ambu bags, suction equipment, biohazard containers. We lack computers in the hallways, which is very key in communication through our department. Communication that involves what's coming in the back door, what's coming in the front door, orders. Hallways are so crowded at Providence. Space is limited to just move basic things, people from department to department that need to go to CAT scan or x-ray.
Thank you, Josie. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'm concerned about our staffing and our limited, just in general, hallway nursing is just a very poor and inadequate way to get patient care.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Veronica, I'll just say Veronica. Veronica, could you please give your name and your city of residence? Please turn on your camera if possible, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and at 2 minutes, 30 seconds, I'll ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, my name is Veronica. I used to be a nurse at Providence. I was there for a year and a half. I started my nursing career March of 2020, so right at the height of the pandemic, and that's kind of where I went through my residency, was during the pandemic. So really, pandemic nursing is the only kind of nursing that I've practiced. I was able to stay at Providence for a year and a half, but at that point, it was getting to be to the point where I wanted to put my notice in and quit nursing entirely. I knew something wasn't right because I know this is my calling, and I know that it wasn't how it should be. So I made the decision to do travel nursing. So I'm one of those nurses that has left Providence and is now doing travel nursing in Seattle. And I just wanted to highlight why I did that, because so many nurses from my unit have burned out in less than 2 years after starting their career because Providence sets unrealistic expectations on how much work they expect their nurses to do. Since leaving Providence and having been at 2 other hospitals in the greater Seattle area, I know that that is not how it has to be. Nurses do not have to be so stressed at work where they do not get to take their breaks ever. At one day at Providence, I took a 1-hour break one time. Since transitioning to the other hospitals, it's standard that every nurse gets at least, with all their breaks combined. I work night shifts, so we're able to combine our breaks into one lump break. We're able to take an hour break every single shift. That would have never happened at Providence. When I was at Providence, I was getting maybe 15 to 30-minute breaks here and there occasionally, but there was often times where I'd work 6 days in a row and get no break in any of those days. And it was hard and it was tough, and I went home crying, and it was not good. So since leaving Providence and experiencing other hospitals, I have been much happier. My mental health is better. I'm getting my breaks. I don't feel drained. I'm able to take my vacations now. So I think Providence really needs to figure something out about how to keep their nurses and how to keep their nurses happy, because it's not working the way it is. And to be honest, one of the biggest things that I saw at the other hospitals that I've experienced in the last 6 months since leaving Providence, they have about twice as many CNAs or aides on the unit to help out with stuff. Like if at Providence, nurses at nighttime take all of their own vitals, even if you have 5 patients. And going into rooms just to do vitals, which is something anybody can do who's trained with basic CNA skills, that takes up so much of your time that I can't dedicate to treating patients, to charting, to calling family members. That's all time that I don't have time for at Providence, or that eats up my break time. But at other hospitals, when they have aides help out on the floor and do more of that stuff, like taking vitals and the stuff that I don't need to necessarily be doing, it's so much better for work-life balance. So I just wanted to say that Providence really needs to figure out how they're going to help support the nurses better, because at this current rate, nurses are leaving in droves, and it's not like this elsewhere in the greater Seattle area. And I really hope and pray for my sisters and brothers there that are still there, that, that Providence is able to find some help for them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments. And Mr. James Harrigan, please begin. If you can turn on your camera, I see you have, unmute, and please by giving your name and city of residence, please, sir.
Sure, thank you very much. My name is James Harrigan, and I live in Sultan, but I've worked at Providence. I've been with Providence better part of 10 years and did all my schooling at Everett Community College, so I have deep connections with Everett. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about the same topic that the previous speakers have been speaking about. I'm a nurse at Providence, and I worked on a progressive care unit for about 6 years, and then I've moved to IV therapy since then. And in my current role, I go to every department. So I see the ER, I see inpatient acute care, pretty much every department. The other thing is I've been involved with the staffing committee, which is a committee that every hospital is mandated to have based off of the state law. And I've been involved with that prior to the pandemic. And there's many things that I would like to point out. I only have a little bit of time, so I want to just try and highlight a few things. I think accountability is really important, and that's why I would like to address some of the comments that Mayor Franklin made in the last meeting, to kind of hopefully give some context for what I'm saying, and also what anybody else who speaks on this topic today said and is going to say. And to refresh, the thing that she said was basically that Providence is doing everything that they can, and that there's nothing more that they can really do. It's got to get better before it gets worse, and really simplify the issue to people are leaving Providence because they're more or less jealous of travel nurses and are leaving to get paid more. So, and as the previous speaker pointed out, there are people leaving, but it's not because of that issue. That representation is extremely oversimplified. It's actually, I think a lot of nurses were very shocked by that description. There are many, many reasons. You'll hear some of them tonight, but what I would basically want to point out is that our staffing committee, which is basically its job to talk about and understand staffing issues at Providence, was not consulted. We didn't have any conversation with the mayor for her to formulate the perspective that she has. And I would even say that the people that she spoke to would have a more nuanced description of our issues than what she presented. So what she presented was extremely narrow, and it also came across as very one-sided, as if she wasn't really representing the community at large, but was representing Providence essentially. So I'm sure, hopefully she hears this, and I would really encourage her to consider, maybe reframing how she, if she disagrees with that description, reframing what her comments would be. But one certain thing that Providence is not doing is that they're not really being very transparent. We've had many, many issues in our staffing committee with transparency, where we're being told that we cannot record our meetings, even though there's many, many benefits to it, and yet no downsides to it. It's really just a lack of desire to have transparency.
30 seconds, please.
With what minute or what kind of notes we have in our meetings. And this is important because we have lots of great ideas, lots of good conversations. You'll hear many of them. We have lots of issues, and we have the staffing committee is where we get to really talk about them and have accountability. But then we don't have very good transparency with those meetings. So that is certainly one thing, because when staff do not have transparency and their trust in Providence deteriorates, and they can't see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that they have people that are working to make things better, they lose hope. And that's one of the big reasons why people leave. So transparency and basically an overall breakdown of community is the main issue. And one final point, there's, like I said, many, is this is not a primarily pandemic crisis. we had a staffing crisis before the pandemic. Like I said, I was part of the staffing committee before the pandemic occurred. And we had the same issues where staff were consistently not getting their breaks, and just people were being replaced. Experienced staff, 30-year staff, were being replaced by students. And we were saying, what's the plan? Because this can't go on forever. So many of us predicted this issue, 5 years ago.
Mr.
So-
Harrington, I need to ask you to wrap up, please.
Absolutely. So please ask us questions. Our staffing committee is very interested in discussing this more, and we will, I'm sure, be in touch with the city council and the mayor in the future. So I really appreciate it, and I hope you give special attention to the staff that are from the ER, because the conditions there are severe. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate all the comments that have been made this evening. President Stonecipher, we also have Kelly Johnson here in the audience who wishes to speak on this item. And as she's coming up, I'll also let you know that we have another individual wishing to speak, but not till item 14.
Thank
So
you.
Kelly, if you'd like to come up and give your name and city for the residents, please.
Where do I stand? Right here. My name's Kelly Johnson. I'm an ER nurse at Providence. I spoke last week. Before I start speaking, I would like to ask the council if I can extend my time from 3 minutes to 5 minutes so I can give my full statement.
I will allow that this evening.
Okay, thank you. Based on the statement last week from our mayor, the CEO of Everett, I realized that my statement last week fell short of communicating the crisis in the emergency department. After she only spoke privately with the CEO of Providence, she boiled it down to nurses of Providence being jealous of the compensation of travel nurses, and that the solution to the problem is that it will have to get worse before it gets better. I'm asking tonight, what is worse? How bad does it have to get? Never mind the depression and anxiety that nurses have been having for the first time in their life. At this point, it's not about us anymore. What we're asking is, how bad does it have to get for the patients before it gets better? Who makes that decision? Is it Providence? Is it the mayor? Is it the nurses? Is it the legislators? For nurses in the emergency department, it's already worse. And for it to get worse, that means for us, we will have to start seeing people die in our lobby. We are already seeing patients with infections wait for hours in our lobby before they are ever assessed or triaged by a nurse, only to find out that that patient is septic, losing valuable time as they wait to prevent organ failure, which can lead to death. When it's stated it will have to get worse, what does that mean? Will that patient, in fact, have to go into organ failure, and will they, in fact, have to die before action is taken? We are already seeing patients wait for hours with chest pain and abnormal heart rhythms in the emergency department before they are ever even assessed or triaged in the lobby by a nurse, only to lose valuable time while they wait to find out if they are in fact having a heart attack. So when it's said that it has to get worse, what does that mean? Will that patient have to wait so long that they in fact have a heart attack in the lobby? Will they have to go into cardiac arrest? Will other patients have to give chest compressions because no nurses are available to respond? Is that how bad it will have to get before action is taken? We are already seeing parents with their babies, their children, wait for hours in our lobby, parents watching their children get sicker. We have already had to take extreme measures to provide medical treatment for kids that had to wait hours in our lobby. So when you say it has to get worse, how many parents, how many children will have to have this experience in our emergency department before it's bad enough for someone to take action? For nurses, we are telling you we are already there. To say it has to get worse is terrifying for us. Maybe you need proof. If it's not that bad, like Providence says, then they shouldn't have a problem with what I'm about to ask for. I request that Providence provide a public disclosure of all events in which harm did in fact come to the patient, which are also known as sentinel events. If Providence truly has nothing to hide, then I asked them to invite the Labor Department and the Department of Health to come in and do an investigation regarding the staffing issues. If Providence has truly done all they can, and this is because nurses are greedy, I request that Providence provide a public disclosure of all staffing committee meeting minutes, provide public disclosure of how many travel nurse contracts they have canceled and reduced rates that they offer at a lower rate. Provide a public disclosure of our union's attempts to provide solutions to the staffing crisis and Providence's response to those requests and solutions. Provide public disclosure of meetings addressing staffing issues, not just on a hospital level, but on a regional level. I didn't come here last week asking for hazard pay because I am greedy and I only want to stay somewhere where I can get paid more. I asked for hazard pay because I am working in an environment where it is hazardous for my patients to come into this hospital and receive medical care. I am asking for hazard pay because any day and every day that I come in or my coworkers come into work, we are taking a risk that that day will be the day that a patient of mine or theirs is harmed. And that the hospital will do what it does best and will leave me and my coworkers out to dry, and we will be the fall guy. We will be the ones who lose our license and take that risk of going to jail. So when it's said it has to get worse before it gets better, the question is, how bad does it have to get before anyone takes action? Thank you.
President Stonecipher, those are all I have signed up to speak at this time until item number 14. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to council comments and liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, let me start by thanking our commenters for bringing these issues forward. It's clear they're substantial. It's clear they're really important to you. And there are a couple of other council members, Councilmembers Schwab and Fossey, who have been looking more deeply into this than I've had the chance to do so far. So for this evening, in that part of my comments, I'd like to defer to them as we look further into this as to what this council can and should do, how we can play a positive role here, both in terms of action and in terms of transparency. The functioning of this hospital, even if we do not manage it, is an important thing for this community, really a critical thing for this community. So I think that's where we have a very clear council and public interest. So beyond that, I'll defer for now to the other council members on that. A couple of quick comments. I did get a chance last week to, actually early this week, to go to the Lowell neighborhood meeting for Councilmember Paula Ryan. It was a good chance to see and learn about a very different neighborhood from the one I live in, very old and historic. But of course, council work touches all neighborhoods, so we have a responsibility to know, and it was for me then a great chance to learn. Certainly the people there, it was an interesting time, a fun time. The pride is evident in how those people think about their neighborhood, but of course they're dealing with things like crime and trash. The intersection of drugs and mental health and homelessness are present there too. So I guess in that sense, it's like the rest of our neighborhoods, and we're trying to work to improve that, both council and administration. Maybe the most fun thing I did was to attend the Junior Police Academy graduation last Friday. This is something done with middle and high school students, fostering a better communication, better connection between police and the communities they serve. It's a week-long event, was held at Eisenhower Middle School. I listened to two really interesting essays, and I spoke to a number of the graduates and their parents afterwards. It was really interesting and inspiring, really, as I say, a very fun time. I noticed several of them, I asked them about becoming Everett police officers, because that's the way I'm leaning these days. And several also said they were interested in military careers, where I very much respect and admire that. But I have to admit, I'm still hoping we can get them first. And I'm going to be, as I say, leaning in that direction. And thanks, that's all for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Okay, so thank you for your comments. Those were really impactful. I have a variety of comments I was planning on making tonight, but I think I just would like to focus on what our nurses have presented and brought forward to us, because how bad it can get is a serious thought. And I know you would not be here unless you were very concerned about the current status. It appears that there is a crisis here from the conversations that I've been having, and I am concerned about it. The staffing crisis at Providence in Everett, unfortunately, has been going on for some time, and it's obviously not an immediate response to COVID. There's a lot of things that play into it, but these concerns have been brought forward before I've been on council, before COVID, and I'm very concerned about it threatening the safety of our patients and also our nurses working in hazardous environments. Providence being a huge system and very, very important to our region. It's one of the largest healthcare systems in the nation, so it's a very, very critical part of our local healthcare system that we have here, and it's something that my family relies on, and I know my neighbors rely on. Like Councilmember Ryan had said previously, it's where we had our first COVID case, and I remember that distinctly because my daughter was just born. We rely on this hospital and the nurses there to care for this community and our families and our neighbors. So proper staffing is necessary to do that. So what I would like to say is that for having adequate staff on shift to care for patients like nurses want to and that patients deserve, and so that nurses can care for themselves. I think that Providence definitely needs to be looking at ways for proper staffing, at least in the immediate. We're in a hole and in crisis mode, and whatever the reasons for that, we need Providence to retain the nurses it currently has. It sounds like there is a mass exodus happening, people leaving the profession as well as leaving this hospital. And hallway nursing isn't even a Band-Aid when you don't have staff to staff those beds. So whether we're going to be looking at immediate ideas like temporary pay rate boosts or incentives for staff, we really need them to be focusing on taking care of the healthcare workers because they're critical for the safety and the health of this community. I look forward to working with everyone involved in this conversation going forward, looking at the issues before us and seeing where the council needs to step in to protect this community and our healthcare workers that need it right now. So, yeah, how bad does it need to get? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Thank you. Thank you for all the testimony, not even just this week, but the week before. Councilmember Fossey and Ryan and I did meet with some representatives and some nurses. And, I spent over 33 years in the fire service, over 20 of those taking patients to the ER. And I found the stories, the presentations, very, very credible from the nurses. And I'm not sure about the role. I think it'd be unprecedented for this body to manage the affairs of the hospital. But in the present state and condition of the hospital staffing, especially the ER, I'm very concerned. I don't know what the definition of community crisis is or community emergency, but it's very concerning. I would invite some transparency, and I appreciate you asking that. I mean, I haven't heard from management. I'm sure they have their presentation and their point of view, but I would invite their transparency, at least maybe individually, maybe Councilmember Fossey and Ryan and I will like to have a meeting with them also. So I really invite transparency with the community. And also, I mean, from a council member and a community person, even though it isn't our role as council members per se about the hospital, but I can tell you that our community is very concerned about it. It is a very important service that we all have probably used and rely upon for a sense of security. So I would really like to tell my constituents and yours also that, yeah, I have a lot of confidence in the hospital. So I have a lack of confidence right now from some of the credible stories that I've heard. So I'd like to work through that with all of you and others. So thank you for that opportunity. I'll switch gears to we had a budget committee meeting today. I have to compliment the mayor's staff and especially Lori Cummings and Susie Halligan and their staff. I just want to point out one or two particular things about our budget. As you know, we've had several discussions about revenue generation and the possibility of changing our tax levy rate because of the 1% cap on our taxes. Of course, that becomes even more sensitive since we all got our valuations in the mail from the assessor's office. I can assure you from my day job that doesn't mean that our taxes are going up at that portion. That's just the valuation. But there is a particular choice in what we do with other levy revenue. And right now, the mayor's staff is really working hard to find a balance between spending our revenue on needed services, especially public safety, and also future investment in our capital improvements. And at this point, it looks to me that we're putting the bare minimum into our capital improvement line items in our budget. So long-term, and if you look at costs of building materials and labor, we are not funding it at the level that I'm really comfortable this time. So, but those are tough decisions that we all have to make, and there is a balance. And so we're going to keep working on that balance and where that lands. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just echo my colleagues' concerns that of what we're hearing from the hospital nursing staff. And again, my spouse works at the hospital, and he was there all weekend on call. So he too has corroborated everything that we're hearing about the emergency room. It seems to be in a crisis mode. At this point, we do have council members working on legislation. I too wonder what the role of council is. And while we don't necessarily have any role in managing or dictating how the hospital is managed, our role is in advocacy. And so I think that that's where we can, if we want to stay in our lane, we can advocate for change at the hospital, and that may be at the local level, or maybe there's a state or regional approach. And so our council members are working on that, and I have the greatest confidence that they'll come back with something meaningful for us. In the meantime, I'd also ask if administration would work with the hospital to find someone who could come and give us a presentation at council about what's going on over there. As we all know, there's many factors at play, and I'd really like to understand what they're dealing with and what their strategy is and how that's playing out. Because there are many parts of this that I just kind of don't understand exactly what's going on. I know that, there's the great labor evaporation, because I deal with that in my day job, but that may not be at all what they're facing. So it'd be great if we could get them to come and help us understand a little bit what they're dealing with and how we might be able to help them.
Absolutely.
With that. As Councilmember Schwab mentioned, we had a budget committee today. We reviewed the city's reserves. So there are many funds that the city holds in reserve for specific purposes. And we also reviewed the Public Facilities District, the arena, the Angel of the Winds Arena, and how they are spending on their capital projects, because this, of course, is a building that ultimately the city was going to take ownership over. And so our interest is really to ensure that they are keeping up on capital maintenance and repairs and improvements so that when we get it, the building is in good repair for us so that we don't take on that liability. So we had a great presentation from our finance director, Susie Haugen, and I'm sure a lot of her staff played a role in that, but really appreciate seeing that information, and she's going to provide us with some follow-up on that. Our next budget meeting will be on August 18th. So anyone listening can mark their calendar for that. That's all from me. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
No, just to say thank you for the feedback on our finance team. They are phenomenal and a pleasure to work with. And other than that, no administrative update.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, do you have any, the city attorney's office have anything for us?
No report and no executive session. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move now to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion for the 7 consent items?
Councilmember Schwab, so moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have 4 proposed action items. Items 10 and 11 are first readings, so I will read those into the record. Item 10, Council Bill 2207-29, first reading. Adopt a proposed ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Everett Municipal Building Elevator Modernizations, Fund 342, Program 030, as established by ordinance number 3757-20. Third and final reading will be on August 3rd of this year. Item 11 is Council Bill 2207-30. It's also a first reading. Adopt a proposed ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Police Headquarters Window Replacements, Fund 342, Program 031, as established by ordinance number 3758-20. Again, third and final reading for this will also be on August 3rd. Do I have any questions on any of the 4 proposed action items? Seeing none, we'll move on to our action agenda. Item 12, Council Bill 2206-24, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Thornton A. Sullivan Playground Replacement, Fund 354, Program 077, to accumulate project costs in the amount of $1,200,000. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions on this item or comments?
No, just happy to see this moving forward.
Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 13, Council Bill 2206-25, third and final reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special construction project entitled Thornton A. Sullivan Dome Roof Replacement, Fund 354, Program 076, to accumulate costs for the project in the amount of $30,000. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments?
I think that it's a good investment to preserve a kind of a unique facility that hopefully we will find a good use for in the future, and in the meantime, a great opportunity for some storage in this wet environment we otherwise have. The roof will keep that from getting any wetter inside.
Any other questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Item 14, Council Bill 2206-26, third and final reading. Adopt the proposed ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Silver Lake Trail, Fund 354, Program 075, to accumulate project costs in the amount of $1,330,000. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
Are there any questions or comments?
President Stonecipher, we have Mr. Grant Toll that's here to speak on this item.
Thank
Grant,
you.
if you'd like to come up, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to come and speak. I'm not against any of these items. My wife and I like to walk around the trail around Silver Lake, what is already existing there all the time. My kids love to play at the park and swim at the beach, and I'm an avid disc golfer, so I'm pro all of this, and I just wanted to offer any sort of advice or anything I could do to help to make sure that, you know, they both work well and are as safe as can be. Like I said, I'm an avid disc golfer. I've played from Anacortes down to Astoria, Oregon, northern Idaho. There's lots of different courses. They all have different attributes and features, and Silver Lake is actually a good beginner course. It's excellent for people who aren't pros and, you know, don't bomb one of these things 600 feet like I can't. And so it's an excellent spot for people to learn. I'm actually working with Corey Rettenmeyer of the parks right now to try to see if I can get a lost and found box installed there, and maybe set up some program where we give out discs to new disc golfers and get them into the sport. But like I said, it's a great place to learn. With COVID, actually, it became a very popular sport. There's been a boom where there's an app called UDisc that a lot of people use for tracking their rounds and their scores. And before COVID, Silver Lake actually had like a little over 1,000 rounds played a year. And last year it was like 5,500. So it's definitely seen an uptick, and all the courses are seeing that. So like I said, I don't know any of the detailed plans of where anything's going to go and how it might affect, but if there's any advice I can provide on layouts or changes necessary for what'll make the course safe for people, even safer than it is possibly right now, because there are some holes that the course and the walking trail intertwine, and, you know, throwers just have to be smart not to throw a disc and potentially hurt someone, because one of these has a pretty good sharp edge, and flying at 50 miles an hour, I've seen some ugly pictures of people that have been hit. So if there's anything I can do to assist in that, I would be glad to help both projects go along and intermingle well.
Thank you, and thank you for your advocacy for the sport. That's an astounding growth rate, and I guess that's one of the benefits of COVID, is that we all got outside where we thought we were safe.
Yeah, it's a good social distancing.
Yeah, we do have Bob Leonard here, our Parks and Facilities Director, and so I might ask Bob, will you come up and let us understand a little bit about what's going to be happening out there that might impact the disc golf?
Bob Leonard, Parks and Facilities Director. Yeah, the trail will be going through that area, but as it is right now, there is sort of a trail. It isn't paved, but that's where people go. We will be potentially adjusting some of the boxes or tee boxes or some of the baskets to make sure that it's more compatible, and we'd be happy to talk with Grant to help us out with that. But we don't envision a lot of changes.
Okay, great. That you might get this gentleman's information and see if we can help. It sounds like he's already hooked in with Corey.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any council comments on this item?
Well, a few, since this is something close to my heart. I actually did some of the walking on both sides of Silver Lake Road about possible disc golf course alignments. Must be more than 20 years ago now. And I commend the earlier councils for their foresight in purchasing the RV park that doubled the shoreline and really enhanced Thornton Sullivan Park. And I will also say the disc golfers, as somebody who walks through the park commonly and in that area where the trail will be and where the disc golf baskets and tee boxes are now, the disc golfers have been careful and considerate, holding back when they see us and being patient when we wander our way through, whether that's us or kids with a stroller or anything like that. So I think that has been working well, and I'm confident that that Bob and Corey and the team will make the adjustments there and keep that working well while still letting the trail go through. With respect to the trail, I thank Mayor Franklin for bringing that forward. You know, we've been waiting for a long time. There have been a number of different trail plans at different scales, and I think the insight she had was that within fairly limited resources, we could get a fully complete trail through that was ADA compatible, and that will hopefully over time accrete additional resources. And her and our Healthy Streets initiative from 2 years ago really came into play during the early days of COVID, and the signs, the reduction of traffic in that area to just local traffic so we could have more room for the pedestrians, the walkers, the dogs, the kids, the strollers, and bicyclists. It was heavily used, and that seems to have continued. So all of those things to me are in the right direction. The city really maximally using a large asset that it has had for more than a century. So that I'm really happy to see, looking forward to see the completion of the initial parts of the trail, and expecting over time we'll see more of that. Maybe some of the boardwalk we've talked about, maybe that northeast section that's so noisy and with cars ending up in the lake or whacking the light poles periodically. We can move the pedestrians a little bit away from that. So lots of good opportunities there, and again, with enthusiasm, I can support moving forward with the trail, even if it's just in this first stage.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Well, I know this is a passion project for my fellow council member, but I just wanted to add, thank you so much for coming and speaking to the council. I learned a lot more about a sport I really did not know much about. So I appreciate you coming here and sharing all that with us.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab, anything? And I don't have much to add. I'll just say that having been here on the council for as long as I have been, I was part of the committee that authored the first Shoreline Public Access Plan, and this is one of the first steps that, well, we've taken other steps, but this was a major step because I also grew out down in Silver Lake Terrace. So this area is near and dear to my heart, and it's an area where we really need a lot of trails, and so I'm really happy to move forward on this. And while it's not building out the Taj Mahal of walking trails, we have to take the first step, and so this is a great first step given the limited resources that we have. With that, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. With no further business and no executive session, we are now adjourned.